On the night of Mom's birthday, as she was making a wish under the moon, Dad suddenly leaned close to her ear and whispered something. My usually cautious mother, who valued her life above all else, turned around after hearing those words and jumped straight into the pack's silver pit. The silver pit is deadly for us werewolves, only those with a death wish would go there. After Mom died, Dad became infamous. Because Mom was the most cautious person in our pack, her sudden suicide by jumping into the silver pit had to be triggered by Dad's whispered words. So, countless people came to our house, wanting to know what those words were. A single sentence that could make a werewolf break down and commit suicide sparked everyone's curiosity. Whether it was a threat or a dark witch's curse, everyone wanted to know, either to use it or to avoid being its victim. There was even an alpha from a neighboring pack who publicly offered $1 million in exchange for those words. But Dad maintained his silence, not saying a single word. Even when facing the pack council's interrogation, he didn't mention anything, as if he were just a bystander. In the end, because of Dad's passive testimony, he was convicted of inciting suicide and sentenced to 3 years in prison. After handling Mom's funeral arrangements, I visited Dad in prison. I couldn't believe he would hurt Mom, so I couldn't help asking, Dad, what exactly did you tell Mom? Why would she commit suicide? And why choose such a painful way? She hated pain more than anything. Across the visitation glass, Dad's expression remained calm, his gaze lowered. She didn't want to live anymore. What does that have to do with me? His cold words came through the speaker, the electric current making them sound somewhat distorted. Looking at Dad's indifferent face, my heart ached as I choked back tears and said, Mom would cry out in pain even when she got a scratch from a wire fence. She'd frantically search for a healer, terrified that the rust might infect her and endanger her life. On her birthday, her wish was always for our family to be safe and free from disaster and pain, and for me to find a mate soon. Tell me, why would she suddenly commit suicide? And choose such a brutal method? How much pain must she have felt when she died? I was overwhelmed with sadness and utterly confused. Mom was kind-hearted but also brave and generous. Her relationship with Dad had always been good. Why would Dad say something that would drive Mom to suicide? And how could Mom possibly give up her life, give up Dad and me, because of just a few words? What exactly did he say? Faced with my questioning, Dad just gave me a long look, then coldly said, Stop asking. Knowing too much isn't good for you. Don't come back again. With those words, Dad left his seat, unilaterally ending our visit. After leaving the prison, I returned home. The once warm and lively home now only had Mom's black and white memorial photo on the wall. My head throbbed with pain, my chest ached, and I felt surrounded by fog, the air growing thinner by the second. I stumbled into their bedroom, trying to find anything, even the smallest clue, that might let me glimpse the truth. I couldn't believe Dad would do something like this. It hadn't been long since Mom's birthday, but a thin layer of dust had already settled in the room. Opening the closet, their clothes were still neatly folded. Dad always said Mom looked beautiful in red, so most of her clothes were various shades of crimson. Mom loved silver jewelry, ironic for a werewolf, but Dad still gave her special silver-plated pieces that wouldn't burn her skin. Mom was always cold, so Dad kept a soft rabbit fur blanket by his side of the bed. The nightstand, dressing table, and even the walls were covered with their photos. My usually stern father's eyes never strayed from Mom in any of them. The more I saw, the less I understood. Everywhere in this room were imprints of my parents' happiness and love. Every detail showcased Dad's devotion to Mom. Why would Dad destroy all of this? I wanted answers, but Dad refused to see me again. His cold attitude left me at a loss. I had never seen this strange side of him before. It was as if the person I'd grown up with had disappeared along with Mom, and this was just a stranger who looked exactly like my father. A place without family was no longer my home. I moved out of this heartbreaking place and moved in with Ethan, my childhood friend. During those unbearable days, Ethan was always by my side. It wasn't just the scent bond drawing us together, he was patient, gentle, and took care of me in every possible way. He made me feel the warmth of home again. 3 years later, under the guidance of the moon goddess, we decided to become mates. The night before our mating ceremony, Ethan softly asked me, "Sky, your father is out of prison now. Are we really not inviting him to our mating ceremony? Don't you want his blessing for the most important moment of your life?" I remained silent for a while before hesitantly saying, "I just can't understand it. Dad clearly loved Mom so much, and he was such a good person. Why would he cause her death?" Ethan squeezed my trembling hand tightly. "Maybe there's a misunderstanding. How could one sentence make someone commit suicide? Perhaps there was another reason. Maybe your mom's death traumatized your dad so much that he couldn't bear to talk about it." He held me, gently persuading, "No matter what, he's your only family now. The mating ceremony is too important not to tell him about. You don't want to have regrets, do you? How sad would he be if he found out his daughter got mated without even telling him?" Ethan was always so kind, putting himself in others' shoes. During my darkest days, he was like a campfire, illuminating and warming me. His words made my heart soften, and pleasant memories slowly rose to the surface. As the memories gradually faded, I decided to have someone deliver a mating ceremony invitation to my father. The next day, at the mating ceremony venue, flowers and decorations were arranged beautifully, with laughter and joy everywhere. Ethan had prepared the pack's most grand mating ceremony to show how much I meant to him. The place was filled with guests, the atmosphere incredibly festive. Amid this joyful atmosphere, Dad showed up after all. After more than 3 years, he had lost a lot of weight. His suit hung loosely on his frame, looking almost empty. The wrinkles around his eyes and his gray-white hair made him look much older. He kept his back straight, his face showing neither happiness nor sadness, his gaze following Ethan and me wherever we went. I felt that even though Dad's eyes were looking at me, they didn't really see me. It was as if he was looking through me, thinking about something else. It had been too long, I could no longer read the depths in his eyes. At the elder's invitation, Dad walked to the center of the venue, standing between Ethan and me. Ethan, excited and emotional, promised Dad, "Sir, thank you for coming to our mating ceremony. I swear I'll love and protect Sky for the rest of my life. I won't let her suffer even the slightest grievance. I will make her happy." The pack elder, holding the ceremonial bone staff, smiled and asked Dad, as the bride's father, "Do you have anything to say to your daughter?" Dad calmly replied, "Nothing I want to say to her. I just want to say one thing to the groom." After saying this, Dad stepped forward and whispered something in Ethan's ear. After hearing it, the smile on Ethan's face suddenly froze. He looked at me in terror, then ran like a madman toward the silver pit near the altar. I hurriedly followed, running and shouting, "Ethan! Stop! What are you doing?" But Ethan seemed not to hear my screams. My ceremonial dress and high heels limited my pace. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't catch up to him. He was like someone escaping from something terrifying, jumping into the silver pit without hesitation. A dull thud sounded from the bottom of the pit, and blood slowly spread outward. Screams erupted from all around. Everything happened too quickly. By the time everyone realized what had happened, Ethan was already lying motionless at the bottom of the pit. There was no more sound from him. I fell to my knees at the edge of the pit, my white dress pooling around me like spilled milk. The pendant at my throat felt impossibly heavy. The crowd surged forward, their shocked faces blurring together. Some tried to help, others just stared in horror. But I saw only my father, standing exactly where he had been, unmoved by the chaos around him. Ethan was dead. Dead at our mating ceremony. Dead because of one sentence from my father. Once again, the most important person in my life had left me. The cruel pattern repeated itself, leaving me hollow and broken. All the guests rushed toward the silver pit, their faces twisted with horror as they stared at Ethan's body below. Some covered their mouths, others turned away. The festive decorations now seemed to mock our tragedy. No, no, and no. Ethan's mother's scream cut through the air as she collapsed to the ground. Her body convulsed with sobs, her claws digging into the earth as she looked at her son's lifeless form. My baby. My son. My whole body trembled, my heart twisting in pain like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed. My wolf emerged uncontrollably, the shift rippling across my skin in patches of fur and human flesh. Ethan, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please get up. This man who had just sworn to protect me for life had instantly become a cold corpse. The silver had already begun to burn his skin, leaving angry red marks that would never heal. I couldn't accept this reality. How could he bear to leave me behind? Just minutes ago, he had smiled at me with so much love in his eyes. This isn't happening, I said to no one in particular, my voice small and lost. We were supposed to start our life together today. At that moment, Dad walked leisurely toward the silver pit by the altar. His footsteps were measured and calm, as if he were taking a stroll through the park rather than approaching the scene of a tragedy he'd caused. He adjusted his suit cuffs, straightened his tie, as if none of this was his doing, as if he were merely a heartless spectator at someone else's funeral rather than the architect of this nightmare. You! The word exploded from Ethan's father as he charged forward. His body contorted, bones cracking as he partially shifted into his battle stance, face elongating, teeth sharpening. He roared at my father, spittle flying, "What did you say to my son?" He slammed a fist against his chest, eyes glowing amber with rage. Why did he jump into the silver pit after hearing it? What kind of monster are you? He shifted further, claws fully extended as he lunged at my father. His attacks were lethal, slashing at Dad's throat, his chest, anywhere that would draw blood. But Dad, once the pack's beta, hadn't lost his fighting abilities despite 3 years in prison. He faced the attacks with ease, bending backwards to avoid a swipe, sidestepping a lunge, not even bothering to shift forms, simply dodging without striking back. Fight me, you coward! Ethan's father bellowed, his voice roughened by his partial shift. Other pack members formed a circle, their faces twisted with anger as they surrounded him. You demon, shouted one of the elders, pointing a gnarled finger. First you killed your own wife, and now your daughter's mate. A woman in a blue dress stepped forward, her fists clenched. A joyous day ruined by your cursed presence. You shouldn't have been allowed here. Ethan's cousin, a young man who had been his best friend, pushed through the crowd. Ethan always defended you, he said, his voice breaking. When everyone else wanted to run you out of the territory, he stood up for you. He said you were suffering most from losing your mate. He told us not to pour salt on your wounds. His voice rose to a shout. And this is how you repay such a good man. By whispering death into his ear. The accusations continued to fly, each one sharp enough to draw blood, but Dad remained unmoved. With a swift, practiced movement, he kicked away Ethan's father's latest attack, the older man tumbling backwards into the crowd. Dad stood firmly, brushed some invisible dust from his sleeve, and responded. He chose to jump. His voice was cold, detached. What does that have to do with me? A collective gasp rippled through the gathering. Even I, who had witnessed his coldness before, was shocked by his callousness. Ethan's mother suddenly broke free from those comforting her. She lurched forward, her face ravaged by grief, and grabbed my father's sleeve with such force that the fabric tore. Her scream was primal, a sound of pure maternal anguish. "Give me back my son." Tears and mascara streamed down her face. "You monster, why did you have to show up? Why couldn't you just stay away?" She beat her fists against his chest, but he didn't move, didn't try to stop her. He was so kind, he loved Sky so much. How could he possibly commit suicide? At his own mating ceremony. Her voice cracked. How could he bear to abandon Sky when he promised to love her forever? She grabbed Dad's lapels, forcing him to look at her. "Wedding, do you know what he told me? He talked about taking Sky to see snow-capped mountains and oceans, to experience all the beautiful sights and tastes of the world." Her words came faster, desperate. He wanted to start a family and have 3 children. A boy and 2 girls. He had their names picked out. She was shaking now, her grief turning to rage. He wanted a happy, bustling life. Everything was just beginning. How could he throw it all away? "What did you say to him? What did you say?" "I didn't stop her assault on my father. I couldn't." My limbs felt leaden, my throat closed. I could only look at my father in despair, the question burning in my eyes before I could force it from my lips. "Why?" My voice barely carried above the wind, but I knew he heard me. I took a step closer, feeling the stares of everyone around us. "Wasn't killing Mom enough?" My voice gained strength from my pain. "Why did you have to kill Ethan too?" The memories flooded back, unbidden. Once, Dad and Mom loved me so much. Our family was so happy. The bedtime stories, the full moon runs through the forest, the way Dad would throw me into the air and catch me while Mom pretended to scold him for being reckless. Because of one sentence from Dad, Mom died, and our home was gone. My childhood shattered in an instant. It was Ethan who had painstakingly helped me piece myself back together. It was Ethan who helped me feel warmth again, who rekindled my longing for family when I thought that part of me had died with Mom. "You took everything from me." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Now, at this crucial moment when I was about to become his mate and rebuild my connection with family, with Pac, you've destroyed everything again. I couldn't stop the tears now. They flowed freely down my cheeks, dropping onto my white dress. I could have been happy again. I only wanted you to attend in my mother's place, to witness my happy moment. To be my father one more time. My voice broke on the last words. Not only did you fail to fulfill that simple wish, but you shattered my happiness when it was within reach. Why do you hate me so much? Dad's expressionless face finally changed. A flicker of something, pain, regret, crossed his features, showing a rare glimpse of emotion. "Even you think that way." The words were soft, almost wounded. Through my tears, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. "I just want to know what you said." I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gray in his eyes. What words could be so powerful that they drive people to die rather than live with them? I remembered Mom's final moments, how she looked at me with the same terror as Ethan, then turned and ran. How her legs pumped frantically as she raced toward the silver pit. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up. In the end, I saw their bodies at the bottom of the silver pit, skin smoking from contact with the deadly metal. I wanted to know what those words were that made them abandon me, abandon everything, even their own lives. My voice was barely a whisper. Pack members continued shouting accusations from all sides, their anger building to a dangerous pitch. "You're not leaving until you explain yourself." Someone shoved Dad from behind, making him stumble forward. Dad regained his balance instantly. He shook off Ethan's mother's hand and coldly surveyed the crowd, his eyes hardening. "I dare to speak," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "But do you dare to listen?" The chaotic scene instantly fell silent, as if he'd cast a spell. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Everyone fearfully stepped back, no one wanting to be the next to jump into the silver pit. Parents pulled their children behind them. Friends gripped each other's hands. The scent of fear saturated the air. In this situation, when everyone else retreated, I stepped forward. My dress was torn, my makeup streaked with tears, but I stood tall. I dare. The words came out stronger than I felt. Dad looked at me deeply. No regrets, he asked, giving me one last chance to turn away. I nodded firmly, squaring my shoulders. Absolutely no regrets. He leaned toward my ear and finally spoke those words. After Dad finished speaking, everyone stared at me, waiting to see how I would react. After all, they had just witnessed Ethan hear those same words and then rush in terror toward the silver pit. Now, they wanted to see my reaction. Would I also jump to my death? But I just stood there, frowning at my father. You're lying. How could that possibly be what you said? Dad's expression remained calm, as if he had anticipated my reaction. I've told you the truth. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. I argued back heatedly. If that's really all you said, why would Mom and Ethan kill themselves? They were both such simple, happy people. They wouldn't die just because they were afraid of such words. The sentence was so ordinary, and they couldn't have heard it for the first time. I was convinced he was making things up, and I looked at him with suspicion. Dad maintained his indifferent expression. Like I said, they chose to die. What does that have to do with me? My questioning and Dad's calmness confused the pack members. They looked back and forth between us, their eyes filled with doubt. Just then, the pack guards arrived. The lead guard said to my father, "We've received reports that another pack member has died because of you. This is the second death you've been involved in. Come with us for investigation." Dad silently extended his hands, allowing the guards to put silver-lined cuffs on him. Before being taken away, he gave me one long, deep look. That gaze seemed to hold many unspoken words. But in the end, he said nothing. After the guards took Dad away, the pack members remained standing there, looking at me. Seeing that I was actually fine, Ethan's mother finally asked. Cautiously, "Sky, what did your father actually say to you?" During those years when Mom died and Dad was in prison, Ethan had been incredibly attentive to me, and his parents treated me like their own daughter. They became my new family, and I respected and loved them deeply, but now, shame overwhelmed me. Looking at his mother's grief-stricken and confused eyes, I said softly, "Dad only said one thing, I wish you both happiness and joy. Nothing else." Ethan's mother widened her eyes in disbelief. "That's impossible. It must have been some kind of wicked curse." Ethan was clearly terrified after hearing those words. If it was just that simple phrase, he would have heard it dozens of times today. Why would he only react that way when your father said it? Exactly. If it was merely a blessing, why would he jump into the silver pit? The pack members also questioned. We all saw Ethan's expression. That wasn't the reaction of someone who just received good wishes. Who whispers blessings into someone's ear? Wouldn't you say something like that openly and proudly? And why wouldn't he wish happiness to his own daughter? What father only blesses the groom? Sky, you can't protect him just because he's your father. Ethan's father spoke in a deep voice. Ethan loved you so much. My wife and I have treated you like our own daughter. If you have even the slightest bit of gratitude, you shouldn't let him die without explanation. Faced with his plea, I explained again. Mom and Ethan both died the same way, because of a simple blessing. I want to know the truth more than anyone. What kind of words could have such destructive power? Why else would I ask Dad to say it aloud in front of everyone? I find it unbelievable too, but he really only said a blessing. You all saw what happened. I have no reason to lie to you. No one has lost family twice to those words like I have. No one wants answers more than me. Though the pack members were suspicious, they didn't press me further, the one who had suffered the greatest loss. They busied themselves helping prepare Ethan's funeral and comforting his parents. A celebration had turned into mourning. My heart was shattered too. Happiness that had been within reach was now like a bubble that burst at the slightest touch. I felt my soul grow thin, dragging my body like an empty shell through the funeral. I returned to my childhood home, hoping to find some clue, some thread I'd missed before. But I discovered people standing all around the entrance. Seeing my return, the crowd immediately surged toward me like a wave, their eyes hungry and desperate. "You're Sky, right? We heard your father told you those words." A middle-aged man grabbed my sleeve, his fingers digging in. "What exactly did he say that took 2 lives so quickly?" "Just a whisper and I'll leave you alone. If you're willing to share, we'll exchange it for whatever you need. Name your price." A well-dressed beta wolf held up a stack of bills. 10,000. 20. Whatever you want. They surrounded me like people possessed, their bodies pressing closer, hands reaching out to touch my shoulders, my arms, my clothes. "Please," one whispered, lips almost touching my ear. "I need to know what words have such power." I shoved through them with all my strength, heart pounding against my ribs. "Get away from me." I rushed into the house, slammed the door so hard the frame cracked, and activated the isolation barrier with shaking hands. The blue light of the barrier flickered to life, sealing me away from their hunger. "Sky." They pounded on the door. "Just tell us." Their voices faded as the barrier took full effect. The sudden silence felt like a physical weight lifting. With the outside noise blocked, I curled up in the corner of the living room, knees pulled tight against my chest. My breath came in short, painful gasps. Why can't they just leave me alone? I whispered to the empty house, my voice breaking. Haven't I lost enough? Memories of better times floated through my mind unbidden, each one a knife twisting in my chest. Mom's face, looking at me with a gentle smile, tucking my hair behind my ear the way she always did. "My beautiful girl," she'd say, her eyes crinkling at the corners. The way she made wishes to the moon on her birthday, standing in our backyard with her arms outstretched, the silver light bathing her skin. For my family's happiness, she'd whisper, thinking I couldn't hear. Ethan standing by me during my darkest times, his warm hands steady in mine. "I'm not going anywhere, Sky," he'd promised. "I'll take care of you forever. You're not alone anymore." His serious expression when he knelt and proposed, the nervous way he fumbled with the small box. "I've loved you since we were pups," he'd said, voice catching. "Be my mate." The hopeful look in his eyes when we planned our future together, sketching floor plans for our own den. "This room for the first pup," he'd said, circling a space on the paper. "And maybe another here for the second." The warmth of falling asleep in each other's arms, his heartbeat steady against my back, his breath soft against my neck. Safe. Secure. Home. All these beautiful moments with smiling faces eventually morphed into their terrified expressions. Mom's wide eyes, her mouth forming a silent "no" as she backed away from me. Ethan's face draining of color, his hand dropping mine as if burned. And then their twisted bodies at the bottom of the silver pit. Limbs bent at unnatural angles. Skin blackened where the silver burned. Blood pooling beneath them. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to block out the images, but they kept coming. "Stop," I pleaded with my own mind. "Please stop." The images from my memories piled up, layering over each other, and the more I thought about them, the more something felt wrong. Some detail I was missing. Some connection I couldn't quite make. Both of them had looked at me with such horror before they died. As if they'd seen something monstrous. Something unbearable. What did they see? I whispered. What did Dad tell them? I suddenly stood up, energy surging through me, and began frantically searching the house. I didn't know what I was looking for. A diary? A letter? Some clue left behind. But I felt like I was missing something important, something that might explain everything. Especially the way they looked at me before they died, with such terror and distress. Not anger. Not betrayal. Pure fear. I searched from daylight into the night, methodical at first, then increasingly desperate. I pulled books from shelves, checked between pages for hidden notes. I tapped walls for hollow spaces, looking for secret compartments. I dug through old boxes in the attic, sneezing from the dust. I turned the entire house upside down, leaving no drawer unopened, no floorboard unchecked. Finally, exhausted, covered in dust and cobwebs, I collapsed on my parents' bed. Their scent had long faded from the sheets, leaving only emptiness. I stared at the ceiling, body aching, mind racing with possibilities, none of them making sense. I felt like a deer lost in a blizzard, unable to find direction or see the way home. Each thought led nowhere, each theory crumbled under scrutiny. It seemed the whole world was telling me I had nowhere to go, no one to depend on. Mom gone. Ethan gone. Dad, still here physically, but gone in every way that mattered. Confusion enveloped me completely, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Unable to find direction, I could only remain frozen in place, my mind a carousel of unanswerable questions. Just then, the lock on the front door turned with a soft click. Strangely, the security alarm wasn't triggered, it should have sounded the moment anyone approached the barrier. My wolf senses instantly heightened. I rolled silently off the bed, every muscle tense. I crept down the hallway, keeping close to the wall. My claws extended instinctively, ready for whatever threat had breached our defenses. I peered around the corner into the living room and saw my father standing in the entryway. He was supposed to be in custody. The pack guards had taken him away just hours ago. Last time my father was taken by the guards, he served 3 years in the silver-lined cells beneath the pack courthouse. This time he returned as if nothing had happened, even carrying grocery bags in both arms, as if he'd just returned from shopping at the market. Dad? My voice came out as a croak. I stood in the living room, staring at him, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Had he escaped? Had they released him? Why wasn't he saying anything? Dad nodded once in acknowledgement but didn't speak. He calmly walked into the kitchen and began unpacking the bags, vegetables, meat, a container of noodles. My confusion grew as he filled a pot with water and set it on the stove. Dad, what's going on? How are you? Here. I asked, following him into the kitchen. Did they let you go? Did you? I couldn't bring myself to ask if he'd hurt someone to escape. He didn't answer. Just continued preparing his meal as if I hadn't spoken. He made himself a bowl of noodles with practiced movements. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He carried it to the dining table and ate methodically. Bite. Chew. Swallow. Repeat. His face remained expressionless, eyes focused on nothing. After finishing, he took his dishes back to the kitchen, rinsed them carefully, and placed them in the drying rack. As he washed the dishes, he even hummed a pack melody, an old lullaby he used to sing to me as a child. These everyday actions seemed bizarrely out of place against the backdrop of everything that had happened. Watching him occasionally force a smile on his typically expressionless face made things seem even stranger. The smile never reached his eyes, appearing more like a muscle spasm than an expression of happiness. Remembering how Mom and Ethan had died so tragically, because of him, because of whatever he had whispered to them, I clenched my fists so hard my claws dug into my palms. How can you act so normal? I finally burst out, voice rising. How can you just come home and make dinner like nothing happened? How can you be so carefree after causing 2 deaths? He paused for just a moment, his back to me, then continued drying his hands on a towel as if I hadn't spoken. I turned away, disgust and confusion warring inside me. I returned to my room, closed the door, and called Blackstone, the head of the investigation team. My fingers shook as I dialed. Chief Blackstone, why has my father been released? Blackstone had been handling this case from the beginning, often asking me for information and sharing overlooked details. He'd been kind to me, one of the few who didn't look at me like I might be contagious. From the other end of the phone, Blackstone sighed heavily. Your father insisted he only said a blessing. His voice was tired, defeated. He repeated it 100 times during questioning. We have no evidence linking Ethan's death to him. A pause. No witnesses heard what he whispered. According to PAC law, we had to let him go. Another sigh. I'm sorry, Sky. I tried to hold him longer. He lowered his voice to warn me, his tone suddenly urgent. Be careful. The words came out in a rush. Don't trust him. The PAC has been unsettled lately. I could hear papers rustling, as if he was making sure no one was listening. Someone's watching you from the shadows. I've seen them, figures at the edge of the woods near your house. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? Just be vigilant, he said, then hung up abruptly. After hanging up, I remained vigilant around my father, watching his every move from the corner of my eye. I didn't dare close my eyes when sleeping at night, keeping my bedroom door barricaded with a chair. The slightest sound would wake me, a floorboard creaking, the house settling, sending my heart racing. But my watchfulness wasn't entirely fruitless. I discovered that my father always went out in the dead of night, slipping out through the back door when he thought I was asleep. When he returned hours later, he carried the scent of unfamiliar herbs, bitter and pungent, and sometimes ash and smoke, as if he'd been standing near a large fire. Days passed, and except for PAC members constantly coming to ask my father about those words, which he steadfastly refused to share, everything seemed normal. Terrifyingly, unnervingly normal. Dad remained as silent as ever, moving through the house like a ghost. Apart from calling me for meals with a simple, "Food's ready," he never initiated conversation. Until the 7th day. I was tidying my room, organizing the few possessions I had left from before everything fell apart, when I suddenly heard a commotion outside, shouting voices, the sound of breaking glass. Dad's face changed instantly when the first crash came. For the first time since he'd returned, real emotion showed, raw, undisguised fear. He grabbed my arm with bruising force and rushed me into the study, turning a light fixture on the wall that I'd never noticed before. A hidden door opened in the paneling, revealing a dark passage beyond. He pushed me inside, his voice trembling with an urgency I'd never heard before. Run. Don't look back. Stone-faced warrior who betrayed no emotion. Even when people died because of him in PAC skirmishes, he wouldn't so much as furrow his brow or pause in cleaning his blade. After all, for a warrior like him who had served as our PAC's beta for 15 years, death was all too common, just another day's work. But now, something had changed. I had never seen him so panicked before, not during the territory wars, not when Mom died, not even at Ethan's death. Dad, what's happening? Why are we running? My voice sounded small, childlike as it echoed in the dark passage. Father spoke urgently, his breath coming in short bursts, no time to explain. He glanced back at the hidden door, listening for sounds of pursuit. They're coming. Remember, don't trust anyone. His eyes locked with mine, willing me to understand. Not Blackstone, not the elders. No one. Especially those who seem friendly. His grip tightened painfully. The friendlier they seem, the more dangerous they are. His pupils were dilated to black pools, constantly looking back over his shoulder toward the entrance of the passage. As if something terrifying was chasing us, something worse than death itself. Who's after us? I tried to pull away, to make him explain. Dad, I'm not going anywhere until. Run if you don't want to die, he cut me off sharply. Keep going forward, don't look back. He pushed me hard, sending me stumbling deeper into the darkness. In that moment, illuminated by the faint light from the entrance, he didn't look like the cold, distant man who had caused the deaths of his wife and his daughter's mate. He looked like a father desperately trying to protect his child, my real father, the one I remembered from childhood, before Mom's death changed him. Dad, please, I reached for him. Come with me. He shook his head. I have to buy you time. Before I could ask anything more, the secret door began sliding closed between us. Dad! I lunged forward, but too late. In the final moment before the stone sealed us apart, I saw my father draw his battle knife from his waist, the silver-edged blade that had been passed down through generations of our family. His eyes met mine one last time. I'm sorry, he mouthed, and then the door closed with a final, heavy thud. The passage was pitch black, so dark I couldn't see my own hand before my face. I felt my way forward along the damp walls, my wolf eyes gradually adjusting to find the barest outline of the tunnel ahead. Slippery moss covered the stone surfaces, cool and wet beneath my fingertips. The air smelled of earth and time. Dad, I whispered, though I knew he couldn't hear me. What have you done? After walking for what felt like hours, muscles aching from tension and the awkward, hunched position, I tried to sense my father through our pack bond, the invisible thread that connected family members. I reached for that familiar presence, that steady strength that had been there my entire life, even when he was distant. I discovered the connection was completely blocked, a void where his presence should be. As if something had severed it entirely, or as if he were already dead. The thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cool underground air. The further I went, the more confused and frightened I became. What could make my father, the strongest, most fearless wolf I knew, so afraid that he would send me running? When had he built this secret passage in our home? How long had he anticipated needing an escape route? What secrets had he been keeping all these years? The passage finally ended at the oak forest beyond pack territory, emerging beneath the roots of an ancient tree. Fresh air hit my face as I climbed out, the night sky spread above me, stars cold and distant. I did as my father said, running straight ahead through the underbrush, branches whipping at my face. But my unease grew stronger with every step that took me farther from him. Though I had hated him for causing Mom's and Ethan's deaths, blamed him for destroying my chance at happiness, he had clearly been trying to protect me just now. For the first time in years, I had glimpsed the father I once knew. I couldn't abandon him to whatever threat had him so terrified. Perhaps this was related to their deaths. Perhaps there was more to the story than I knew. Damn it, I muttered, skidding to a halt. My wolf stirred beneath my skin, urging me to go back, to protect pack, to protect family. I turned around and ran back the way I had come, retracing my path through the forest. As I rushed through the trees, a flock of ravens scattered into the air with angry caws, their wings beating like black thunder against the night sky. When I reached the pack lands, I found everything unnaturally quiet, the silence pressing against my ears like a physical weight. The usually bustling square was completely empty, no late-night gatherings around the communal fire pits, no patrolling guards. The bonfire was still burning in the center, flames leaping high, but no one was around to tend it or enjoy its warmth. My footsteps seemed unnaturally loud as I sprinted toward our house, fear clawing at my throat. When I reached our doorstep, I froze, the scene before me stealing the breath from my lungs. Father lay in a pool of blood that gleamed black in the moonlight, spreading across our porch in a dark halo. A silver dagger was plunged into his heart, buried to the hilt in his chest. The metal sizzled against his flesh, the scent of burning skin hanging in the air. The blade bore the pack's totem symbol, the same design that decorated our ceremonial altar. A pack weapon, meant for punishment of the worst offenders. His body was contorted in what must have been his final agony, fingers still positioned as if gripping his knife, trying to defend himself to the last. His battle knife had fallen nearby, its blade coated with black blood that wasn't his own. He had wounded someone before he fell. Strangest of all, despite the violent death, his lips were curved in a slight smile. Peaceful. Almost relieved. Just like Mom and Ethan when they died. The sight before me made my entire body shake with horror and grief. My knees gave way, and I collapsed beside him. No, 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 I whispered, the word becoming a chant, a plea to reverse time. I rushed forward and cradled my father's head in my arms, not caring about the blood soaking into my clothes. His body was already cold, too cold, as if he'd been dead for hours, though I'd seen him alive less than an hour ago. I called out to him desperately, shaking him gently at first, then more frantically. Dad, wake up. Dad, please. My voice broke. Don't leave me too. But there was no response. No twitch of an eyelid, no final breath. Father was dead, gone beyond reaching. His death was brutal, violent, nothing like the peaceful slipping away the elders hoped for. Yet his lips wore that same slight smile I had seen twice before. Identical to Mom's and Ethan's in death, that strange, serene expression that had never made sense. My hands trembled violently as I reached for my communication device, blood making my fingers slip on the screen. I could barely hold it steady enough to press the right buttons, leaving red smears across the surface. I finally managed to contact Blackstone, my voice a broken whisper. He's dead. My father's dead. The guards arrived quickly, their boots pounding on the ground, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Blackstone knelt beside me, gently trying to pull me away from my father's body. Sky, let go. There's nothing you can do for him now. I couldn't move, couldn't release him. He was trying to protect me. Blackstone and his team examined the scene thoroughly, photographing every detail, collecting samples of the blood, both my father's and the unknown assailants. They searched every corner of our property, looking for the attacker, for witnesses, for any clue to what had happened. Finally, they took my father's body back to the pack for examination, covering him with a sheet as they lifted him onto a stretcher. I followed in a daze, numb to everything but the image of his face burned into my mind. Based on the evidence at the scene, he took his own life, the pack healer told me as we stood in the sterile examination room hours later. His voice was calm and clinical, detached in its professional assessment. As if discussing something completely ordinary, not the violent end of my last living family member. I immediately objected, anger cutting through my grief. That's impossible. I slammed my hand on the metal table. You didn't see him. He was clearly terrified, told me to run. Why would he commit suicide when he was trying so hard to protect me? Blackstone patted my shoulder awkwardly, his expression guarded, perhaps it was because of the pack's rumors. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The whispers about what he did to your mother, to Ethan. He didn't want you to see him die. A pause. Maybe he thought his death would end it all. I shook my head violently, tears blurring my vision. Father never cared about others' opinions. I wiped my eyes roughly. Never. You knew him. He'd been calm these past few days. I grabbed Blackstone's arm. Something happened tonight. Someone was after us. Someone must have killed him. My voice rose. Someone who wanted him silenced. My voice began to shake as the implications hit me fully. First Mom, then Ethan, now Father. All dead with that same strange smile. I was terrified, the realization washing over me in an icy wave. Feeling like I would be next. The last of my bloodline, whatever secret we carried dying with me. Blackstone tried to comfort me, his hand awkward on my shoulder. He asked the healer to examine the body again, to look for defensive wounds, signs of struggle. But the final conclusion remained suicide, the official report stating that my father had taken his own life with a ceremonial dagger. Case closed. No further investigation. I handled my father's funeral arrangements alone, refusing the pack's offers of help. I buried his ashes next to Mom's, beneath the willow tree where they had first met as teenagers. Kneeling before their graves, placing wildflowers on the freshly turned earth, I couldn't find peace. Why did all of this happen to me? What thread connected these 3 deaths? What had I done wrong to deserve losing everyone I loved? Just then, the pack's witch approached, her wooden staff tapping a rhythm on the ground. She bowed to the graves first, showing proper respect to the dead. Then she looked at me, her expression grave, ancient eyes studying my face. Sky, there's something you need to know. Her voice was low, meant only for my ears. About your family's curse. She glanced around, as if checking for eavesdroppers. And the true cause of your father's death. She leaned closer. Her eyes were bottomless pools of knowledge, dark with age and secrets. As if they contained countless mysteries stretching back through generations. I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, then hesitated. I suddenly remembered my father's final warning, his last gift to me, don't trust anyone. This was my first time leaving the pack alone, and my first time climbing Sacred Mountain. The path was more difficult than I'd imagined. Loose stones constantly tumbled down the slope. Each step required careful attention. The surroundings were terrifyingly desolate. No birdsong, no insect chirping. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As if something was rotting nearby. Occasionally, beast howls echoed from the distance. Sometimes they seemed close, sometimes far away. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt an inexplicable sense of security. I followed my instincts for a long time. As darkness fell, I finally spotted the stone house at the summit. Thin smoke rose from its chimney. Before I could approach, a hoarse voice called from. You've come. The voice seemed to travel from somewhere far away. Though I'd never heard it before, it felt oddly familiar. I pushed open the creaking wooden door. The flames in the fire pit flickered. They illuminated a gaunt old man. His eyes resembled my father's. The same deep gray color. Only more clouded. Grandfather. My voice trembled slightly. My throat suddenly tightened. He gestured for me to sit, quietly reassuring me, don't be afraid. His fingers were thin as twigs. Herb residue clung to his fingernails. I sat on the grass mat across from him. The mat was old but clean. He spoke first, your parents did their best to raise you. They can rest in peace now. I was stunned, you know they're dead. Do you know why? Why did they all commit suicide? Grandfather heaved a long sigh. This sigh seemed to traverse decades of time. It goes back to when I was young. I was too arrogant then. Though not born to the witch bloodline, I believed I could see through fate, control destiny. I performed divinations recklessly. He added another log to the fire, but divination demands a price. Your birth became my downfall. The firelight illuminated his wrinkled face, the best solution was to kill you. But your parents refused. I could only hide away here. My fingers unconsciously gripped the edge of my clothing, so they all died because of me, not entirely. Grandfather shook his head, forcibly changing fate affects everyone around you. From the moment they decided to keep you, the outcome was sealed. He looked directly into my eyes, they all knew. They just didn't want you to feel guilty. The fire suddenly crackled loudly, as if affirming his words. That sentence you've been obsessing over. Your father was just creating a distraction, trying to take the responsibility upon himself. I finally understood. No wonder father was so cautious, carefully weighing each word before speaking. He wasn't afraid of dying himself. He feared for my safety. Feared I would discover the truth. Mother knew too, but never mentioned it. They would rather let me misunderstand them. Remembering father's final gaze. That look of reluctance and resolution. My heart felt torn to pieces. They endured so much for me, while I kept blaming them. All these years, how much pain mother must have felt. How lonely father must have been. I hated myself completely. My nails dug deep into my palms. Tears dripped into the fire pit, making hissing sounds. After crying for a long time, I looked up and asked grandfather, "What about Ethan? Why did he have to die too?" My voice was so hoarse it didn't sound like mine. Grandfather's expression grew solemn. He fumbled at his waist and pulled out a bone fragment. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. He was caught in the crossfire. You are destined to be a lone wolf, without any attachments, whether by blood or emotion. Anyone who truly loves you will die because of you. Entire body trembled. That's impossible. There must be a way to break this curse. Grandfather weakly shook his head. I've told you everything. Believe it or not, it's up to you. His breathing became labored. I grabbed his withered hand. Then what meaning does my life have? I might as well just. Grandfather suddenly gripped my hand with surprising strength. Your parents exchanged their lives for yours. That is your meaning. His fingernails nearly broke my skin. After speaking, his head dropped down, never to rise again. The fire in the pit suddenly extinguished. Grandfather was dead too. Just as he had said. Everyone close to me would die. I buried grandfather at the highest point of Sacred Mountain. I built a simple grave with stones. No headstone, secretive like the man himself. Returning to the stone house, I searched every corner carefully. Under the floorboards, I discovered a hidden compartment. Inside were several bone fragments carved with symbols. I took out the bone whistle my father had left me and blew a specific tune. The sound echoed through the valley. After descending the mountain, I went straight to find Sage. She was grinding herbs in front of the altar. She seemed surprised to see me. You met your grandfather. Her eyes flickered in the firelight. I nodded. I did. Thank you for telling me the truth. Sage smiled. You're welcome. Your grandfather once saved my life. She reached out to touch my head. From now on, you can visit often. I'll care for you like my own granddaughter. I stepped back, looking at her coldly. So that's your reason for killing my entire family? So I could be your granddaughter. Her hand froze in midair. The smile on her face slowly hardened. Sage's expression froze. Her hand remained suspended in midair. Her knuckles turned white from tension. Sky, what are you saying? How could I possibly harm your family? Her voice suddenly became high-pitched. I gave a cold laugh. You were quite thorough in pursuing your goals. Killing people, hiring someone to pretend to be my grandfather to spin tales. Did you think you could fool me so easily? Seeing my confident gaze, Sage dropped her fake smile. She slowly lowered her hand and sat up straight. The wrinkles on her face suddenly deepened. You know everything. Her voice had completely changed. No longer gentle, but piercing cold. I nodded. That's right. The prophet you spoke of wasn't my grandfather, but you. The one destined for loneliness isn't me, but your granddaughter. Isn't that so? Sage didn't deny it. Her bony fingers tapped against the altar. Continue. I stared into her cloudy eyes. You were present on my father's birthday. You were also at my mating ceremony. When they died, they weren't looking at me. They were looking at you, standing behind me. Thinking back now, all the clues were there. Both my father and Ethan had offered sage ritual drinks. When my father rushed me to escape, I'd faintly heard her voice in the passage. Sage chuckled lightly. You're smarter than I thought. Her lips twisted into a grimace. I continued, my birth date is the same as your granddaughter's. The lightning storm that day wasn't caused by me, but by her. As a seer, you recognized her special nature. Sage's pupils contracted sharply. To change her fate, you needed me. You placed a curse in their drinks, forcing them to commit suicide. Then used your magic to make my father take the blame. Finally, you staged his suicide. My voice grew colder. You did all this to break me completely. You wanted me to take your granddaughter's place, to change her fate. Sage narrowed her eyes. If you knew all this, why dare come find me? She slowly stood up. I laughed coldly. You were too confident. Your cleverness betrayed you. Sage became alert. What do you mean? I looked directly at her. Even when the healer said my father committed suicide, I didn't believe it. He wouldn't kill himself without reason. Considering my mother's and Ethan's deaths, I knew someone was manipulating events from the shadows. Sage's hands began to tremble. I placed specially prepared ghost herb on my parents' graves. Only those who had contact with their deaths would be affected. And the musk I'm wearing will trigger its effects. You've been poisoned since the moment I entered. My father had taught me this. He always said understanding poisons was essential for self-protection. Never imagined I'd use this knowledge now. Sage tried to stand but collapsed to the ground. Her face turned ashen. You wretched girl. How dare you poison me? I looked down at her. You played dirty first. I'm merely returning the favor. Just then, Blackstone burst in with the guards. I had notified him with the bone whistle before coming. Sage tried to deny everything. I pulled out a recording stone. She's confessed to everything. Blackstone looked at me with pride. Sky, you've done well. Your parents and Ethan would be proud. I said quietly, I just didn't want their deaths to remain unexplained. Later, Sage was executed. I stood outside the execution grounds, choosing not to watch. Her granddaughter was sent to a distant pack. I continued living, carrying the hopes of my parents and Ethan. Every morning, I visit their graves to talk with them. I believe they would want me to live well. Just as my father said, living itself is the meaning. After Sage's execution, I returned to Sacred Mountain one last time. The stone house stood empty, a silent testament to my grandfather's solitary life and the lies woven around him. I searched the hidden compartment again and found one final bone fragment I'd missed before. This one was different, smoother, whiter, with symbols that seemed to pulse with inner light. When I touched it, visions flooded my mind, my mother smiling, my father teaching me to hunt, Ethan's laughter. Not memories, but glimpses of what might have been. If Sage hadn't interfered. I understood then that my grandfather's divinations weren't just recordings of the past or predictions of the future, they were windows into possibilities. Back in the pack, things slowly changed. With Blackstone's help, I restored my family's honor. The whispers about my father faded, replaced by stories of his sacrifice and loyalty. Some pack members still kept their distance, unsure what to make of me. The Silver Queen prophecy lingered in hushed conversations. Was it true, or just another of Sage's manipulations? I wasn't sure myself. On full moon nights, I sometimes felt silver light coursing through my veins, neither painful nor frightening, but simply part of who I am. Whatever power Sage had feared in me remained dormant, waiting. Perhaps one day I'll discover its purpose. Perhaps not. For now, I am content to honor those who loved me enough to die for me by simply living, each day a testament to their sacrifice. I wear my mother's silver pendant always. It no longer feels heavy around my neck, but rather like a protective charm, connecting me to those I've lost. Living itself is meaning enough. And in that meaning, I've found peace.